Sit in front of a bookcase to make himself look intelligent, then.
You know what them books are, Stanley? How to make pizzas.
They are all cookbooks if you look a bit closer.
You don't need books how to make pizzas, do you, Joe?
Thank you to our 3 sponsors for supporting our podcast. John Russell's Art Caterers and Milltown Pies, who offer fantastic catering services, Alexander Grace Law, who provide modern and client-led legal services, and SBE Furnishings, who offer high-quality furnishings and electrical items at fantastic prices.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another podcast from Lowerhouse, the Housecast. Crikey, this has really taken off just recently. I was down at the cricket club today, and everyone I bumped into were asking about the podcast, how much they were enjoying it, and it seems to be the whole community and village are loving it. So thanks very much, everyone, for listening, and we'll keep going as long as we can through lockdown and beyond. We've still got plenty of guests to go that want to come on and that we want to come on, so we'll do as much as we can. Today we've got a top quality guest, someone who's high profile at the club at the current time, and I'm sure a lot of people will want to hear from him and know about current affairs, etc. But before we go on to our guest, welcome the 2 co-presenters who are with me tonight. We've got Joe Beneducci. How's it going, Dooch?
All right, thank you, Jez. Very well.
Yeah, up to much? Is there any changes from what's been going on?
No, mate, nothing really. A bit of golf, that's all really. Not much.
We've had a couple cry off tonight, so we've got a substitute in, but he's helping us out a lot with the podcast just recently. He's doing some editing for us, really helping out. We've got our managing director, Matthew Stansfield. Welcome back, Matt. How are you?
Very good, thank you, Jez. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Been a little bit busy. Just last day or two, there's not been much difference other than I arranged with Stan to go into the club today, and we've given the first coat to the decking in front of the dressing room. So that were a bit of donkey work, but we had a right laugh. It was almost, going back to being stood on the end of a bar with Stan. We had a right good laugh with it, Stanley. But no, it's everything's going well.
Was he sober, Jez?
He was sober. He was sober when I left him at about 5 o'clock. There was paint everywhere, but we did have a laugh. It's comical, isn't it, when you're doing things with Stan and people are walking around. Good fun. It's good fun. What have you been up to, Stanley? You're still looking after your 3 loved ones?
Yeah, they looked after me over the weekend. It was my birthday, so they put on a lovely lockdown birthday for me, which was excellent.
Oh, it was a significant birthday, I think, Stanley. Is that right?
It was, yes. I was 40 weekend just gone, Jez.
Just 40?
That was coming, thank you.
That's congratulations on that. And yeah, and the 3 girls will properly look after you. So anyway, on to our guest. We've been chatting to this individual a couple of times over the last few weeks. He helps us out with what's happening around the league and any news he's having. It's our current first 11 captain, Ben Heap. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Hi, Jez. Dooch, Stanley, you all right?
Yeah, we're good, thank you. Yeah, we've had a busy old time going through these podcasts. We've probably got 3 or 4 now lined up, but I know you've been listening to them intently. We bumped into each other this morning, and you were mentioning about that you've had a good listen to them. Have you been up to much recently, Ben?
I've been doing a little bit of fishing, Jez. That's what's kept me busy during the lockdown, and I must say that they've made great listening when I'm out on the bank, cooking my evening meal, stuff like that. You got to picture it. Out in the sticks, middle of nowhere, and listening to you boys. You've done a fantastic job, I must say, and they've been really good listening.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Ben. That's really interesting. When did Fishin come back in? Was it ever banned? I know you probably said.
Yeah. You couldn't do it to start with, like pretty much like everything else, and that was difficult, to be honest with you. I'm an outdoors type of person, if I'm being honest. I'm out with my dogs, or I'm playing cricket, or I'm fishing, and I'm outside. So when the switch was flipped and we were allowed to do a little bit more, I was straight out there on the bank. I think I did a 24-hour session straight away.
No way, 24 hours? Fucking hell, Ben. Okay, no. Just painted some decking. You could have gone and watched that for 24 hours. Right. Ben, it really interests me because I've never done it, and I know off air we were just chatting then about being such a popular sport. I remember when you were really little, you used to go off fishing. I do remember. When did you first start that pastime?
Oh, to be honest, I must have been so young that I can't remember.
How long ago?
Yeah. I think a couple of my uncles took me when I was younger. My granddad used to take me as well. And it's just something that if it's in your family and one of your relatives takes you fishing and you catch that fish for the first time, excuse the pun, but you're hooked for life. You literally are. It's just something that never leaves you. So yeah, just as a youngster really, and once you get that first bite and you feel that first fish on the end of the rod, it's something that you can't describe, and it is an adrenaline rush when you catch that fish. And there's lots of different sort of disciplines in fishing within it. You wouldn't think that if you didn't know anything about it, but there's a lot of different disciplines in there. And it just so happens the one that I choose to do is probably the most time consuming, and you need a lot of patience, shall we say, because you're doing a long time waiting for one fish more often than not. And that's usually a decent sized fish.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's carp fishing.
Yeah, carp fishing. They are the hardest sort of freshwater fighting fish and the biggest adrenaline rush, really.
Yeah, I believe so.
Am I right in thinking that you fished live on Sky Sports at one point?
I did, yeah. When I was younger, I was about 14, 15 maybe. I fished in the British Carp Championships. I was in the finals down in Kent. So that was 48 hours, that competition.
Live on Sky Sports?
Yeah, live on Sky Sports. So I probably missed some cricket as well, believe it or not, to enter that. Didn't do that well in the final, but obviously to get there, we and my partner, fishing partner that is, we won our regional competition.
I didn't know that, Ben, and it's fantastic that that you're that dedicated to something, and obviously you're similar to the cricket. Joe Beneducci's just sent me a message now asking when he catches the carp, do they batter it? And and have it with chips and peas. And I've tried to explain to him, you throw all carp back, you just don't get it.
Yeah, you can't throw them, Jez. You don't throw them.
No,
you place them back in the water.
Place them back in the water.
Well, you can get that from Chippy. Place, definitely.
Joe can probably recite the full menu from Birds to you if you want him to, with prices.
I'm surprised at you, Jez, really, for not knowing that. Well, I knew they're a protected species these days, and it's probably a criminal offence to injure a carp or move it from a lake or something like that.
Yeah, you're right, it is. Yeah, Section 27B of the Wild Act. If you could batter the carp. Anyway, so that takes me on to going through your career, Ben. You mentioned your granddad there, and other uncles taking you fishing. Again, one of my early memories, obviously, your family are down the club, and and Dave, Papa Bless, just constantly throwing you balls. And at a really young age, and you'd be doing the dead straight drives. So that's obviously got you into the club at Lowerhouse. What's your early memories of that and of that period of time, and who was there?
My granddad, my grandma and granddad used to live on Ironhill Park Lane. Yeah. And the backyard there, we sort of turned into a little cricket pitch with the washing line and the ball on the washing line. So I spent hours on end in there practicing. Then we'd have a little game. But believe it or not, though, there is a little tale to how I came about playing for Lowerhouse, because initially I was a Belvedere junior, believe it or not.
All right.
Yeah. In 1997, can you remember who the professional was that year? It was the one and only Corey Jordan. And yeah, I remember this very well. My granddad brought me down to a cricket session, a junior cricket session, one Wednesday evening, I think it was. And we turned up to practice, paid the money or whatever it was back then. And all I can remember is Corey Jordan taking away the 10, 12 lads who were there playing in the under-15s team, taking them to one side onto the other side of the field and leaving all the new lads just to stand there and watch.
Right.
So that was my first experience at Lowerhouse Cricket Club. And my granddad, after about 10 minutes, told me to get in the car, and we drove away. And that was that for a couple of seasons. But imagine that happening in this day and age. Kids just stood there not doing anything. And if I remember rightly, I was only young, maybe 9 or 10 perhaps. And I remember he took that team to one side to go and work on the running between the wickets and left everybody else just to watch. So I wonder who would have been in that under-15s team in 1997 who needed working on their running between the wickets.
I hope he got someone else to teach him how to run between the wickets, from my experience of watching him play.
That's interesting, Ben, you tell that story. I think he was pro in 97, so you would have been 9.
Yeah.
then, and obviously your uncle, which was a massive influence on you coming. You know, your dad, your granddad being there, and then you playing ultimately down there. Did Papa Blaise ever say anything to anyone about that incident, or did Chris know about that incident?
I'm not too sure. Like I say, I was very young, but I think part of the problem was, there was no Stan Eaton involved at this stage. I don't think.
Yeah.
It was another good couple of years before Stan got involved, and that's when I came back down to the club, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. So we've got someone as young as you that is bringing up that season. It's happening quite a bit in the podcast that memories from that season are coming up, some good, some bad. So we're in the process of trying to get, like a special edition together around that season, and try and get to the whole truth. Whether we ever do or not, I don't know. So you've been down to the club, things haven't gone right, so you've gone up to Belvedere. Did you play much up there in senior cricket?
I didn't play any senior cricket, I don't think, from what I can remember.
Right.
I just sort of played in all the age group teams, but I can't remember exactly what they were, because I'd imagine they didn't have an age group team for every age group.
Okay.
But one interesting thing is that I was actually a wicketkeeper when I left Belvedere before coming to Lowerhouse. Yeah, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but I don't know if that was due to the fact that most of the lads in the team that I was playing in weren't very good with their hands or what. But yeah, I was a wicketkeeper at Belvedere as a junior.
Right, so you've played there for a couple of years. So then you're looking at 99.
Yeah, I think it was
something like that.
I've got written down 99, maybe 2000, something like that.
Right. So you've come to the club then. You're going to be then 12, sort of age. What's your memories of the early junior cricket setup? How you went, and the people that were around that at that time then, Ben? Yeah,
no, great memories of the junior cricket when I came back. I actually remember my first ever conversation with Stan. And I think we'd gone down to see me and my granddad about coming back down, and I think Stan had taken over and obviously took great pride in the junior section then. And the conversation goes along the lines of, I was telling Stan how good I was, and he was telling me he'd be the judge of that in his own quirky way.
Yeah, so nothing's changed. Crikey, so that's going to be Martin van Jaarsveld, that sort of era. When you've come down, you've obviously played under 13s and under 15s, and then you've progressed through there. And I remember you down there, Ben. I remember, you were clearly a talent. You were similar age to Adam, so I would be watching the junior games that were going on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, me and Adam grew up playing a lot of cricket together.
Yeah, right up to, I suppose, 15, 16, 17. What's your memories then as you start obviously getting into, I'm assuming, your 13 first?
Yeah. So I think I made my third team debut in 2002, and I made my second team debut the same year. And I have great memories of that era. And a lot of sort of ex-players helped me along the way. People who are still involved at the club who don't play anymore.
Yeah.
People like Phil Haggerty, Tommy Briley, Chris Astin, Matt Marquis, Gav Shields, Matt Stanny, and even Greg Brown. They all helped me along the way, definitely.
Yeah, so they would all that group of Matt Stanley's group of rugrats that came down, they would have been a good, 8 years older than you, something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of at the age of 13, 14, I was a real live wire, as you can imagine, and I needed calming down on many occasions. And I really do owe that group of players a lot. I just throw Phil Astin in there as well, the late Phil Astin. What a mentor he was as a junior, as a 13 captain, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So these people, and this is a common theme throughout these podcasts, that it's rekindling memories, and they're all great memories of individuals that have helped this club that continue to grow. And I don't know whether he'll thank me for it, but today me and Stan have just been doing a bit of painting at the club, and Ben came down and we chatted a little bit. We chatted about tonight. Stan mentioned, a few things about, how the club is, in the short term is going to continue, what the first team squad are going to be like, and the other juniors. And when you walked away, Ben, without any prompting, he said, it's people like him that keep me going, because I know he'll take over from me. And that, it was one of them moments, I know it sounds a little bit soppy, And I've no doubt if Stan had had a Chinzano or two, then he might have had a bit of a frog in his throat when he said it. That was unprompted. That's what he said, and that's what's happened when you think. We've talked about Bill Holt. Probably late 60s, 70s, and now you're still there along with other people. So it's fantastic to hear. So Ben, you've got to that sort of age. You're playing the seconds. I'm assuming you're playing in there quite regularly before you get in the first team?
Yeah. I think I had 2 seasons, in the second team.
Right.
Sort of 2002 and the majority of 2003. And then I made my first team debut at the end of 2003. I made my first team debut with your nephew, Scott Hope. Me and Scott played the last 2 games of the season against Bacup and Enfield.
Yeah.
Just jump in there, Jez. I remember that... obviously, I was playing in the second team then, and actually, we'd had a few kids brought into the second team that Stan had suggested were going to be future stars. And actually, Scott and Ben were the first 2 around that era when you saw them play, and straight away you thought, yeah, these lads can play a bit. Ben in particular, I must admit, it was fairly obvious fairly quickly that he was going to be a very good player. So.
Yeah, and I don't, Stanley. I can't express enough of the amount of times you would see Dave Blaise throwing balls to Ben. It was just very similar to Mark Whitehead throwing them to Johnny Whitehead in the outfield. Dooch, have you any observations around that early career of Ben's and what he achieved at that early age?
I didn't play with Ben until he got in the first team. I'd been in the first team myself at that stage. So by the time Ben started playing seconds, I'd already moved on.
I'm going to say, Dooch, I don't think we played a second team game together until we both got dropped.
That's probably right. Yeah,
we'll probably get onto that.
yeah, that's probably right. But yeah, I do remember those 2 games at the end of that season when you and Scott got in the first team at the back end of the season. Yeah, but I've not seen anything of Ben at that stage as a cricketer.
No, and like I said, I've only seen him at practice and obviously know him because I'm such good friends with Chris that he's. I've just fired up that scorecard, Ben, for your debut, 25 not out. Scott got 20, in 117. So, it was obviously, things think that an indication of what was to come later on. So what year we're saying there? 2003.
Yeah, 15 then, I think.
Is this a similar sort of time when there was an alter ego that came to light, MCTNT?
No, that was much later, that.
Really?
Yeah, that was my college days, sort of 17, 18. But we'll get there, I'm sure.
Well, I'm going to say we'll move on and we'll keep that on the back burner until we get to it.
Yeah, well, no, I've got great memories of that first game. Because Bacup were a top team, weren't they? Back in 2003, did they win it 3 times in a row?
They did. Yeah, Sean Young Pro.
Yeah, and I always remember your brother was captain. I think Matt was captain at the time, and we had a draw, me and Scott, who was going to bat 7 and who was going to bat 9. And Scott won the toss the first day, so he batted 7 on the Saturday against Bacup, and I batted 9, and then it swapped round against Enfield on the Sunday, but we didn't bat on the game against Enfield on the Sunday. But that first game, I remember I probably got the easier end, should I say, of the draw, because Scott, to his credit, he had to go out there and face Sean Young. Was it Sean Young?
Yeah, it was,
Yeah,
he had to go out there and face Sean Young at I think Scott's a year younger than me, so he'd have been 14 maybe.
Yeah.
And got 20 odd against, a reasonably quick pro, especially for a 14-year-old lad.
Yeah.
Great memories of that game. You're talking a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old boy making their debuts that weekend. The day after, when we played Enfield, Martin van Jaarsveld was the professional at Enfield.
Yeah.
And he got 100 that day. And what an experience that was, watching him bat, because I'd sort of missed all that. I was playing 13 cricket, or, I might not have been down watching when he was professional for Lowerhouse.
Yeah.
But that was the first sort of serious professional knock that I'd seen and witnessed. And I was just mesmerised by it. I remember him reverse sweeping Matt a few times before and stuff like that, and then slog sweeping him over the changing rooms at Enfield. And I'd never seen anything like that before that day.
Yeah, and to be Martin then would have been even more in his pomp than he was when he pro'd for us. He'd really sussed the league out, and you look at the scorecards there with 246. It's a big score 17 years ago. Yeah. And knocked him off with 3 overs to go quite comfortably. He's got 130 not out. Tell you what's interesting there. I mean, I didn't play in the Enfield game, but I played in the Bay Cup game. We've got Pope as pro. Have you noticed that, dude?
Stephen Pope, South African.
Yeah, and he's bowled 22 and a half overs on the Saturday, and about 23 on the Sunday.
Well, do you not remember? He bowled the first half of his spell medium pace, and then swapped to off spin.
No, I can't.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, when he started blowing a little bit, he came around the wicket and bowled half decent off spin.
And his figures are good, aren't they? He's 7 wickets on Saturday and 4 on the Sunday, so you can't complain about it. So, what were Chris like when you left and went up Belvedere? Did he say anything or do anything? Or?
No, I honestly can't remember him being that heavily involved at that stage, I don't think. You know what Ples is like. He's quite laid back, very laid back. And I think my granddad was probably a little bit more assertive in that respect. And Blaise probably left that to him, really. But my granddad was fantastic. I owe him so much. Not only cricket, as you can imagine, but he was a real, true sort of father figure in my life. Yeah, and taught me everything. And still to this day, I've never heard any bad word about my granddad. So that's something that really hold on to.
Yeah, no, it is. And like you said then about Chris and your granddad, Chris was I saw a lot in Chris as well in Dave, and as they got older I saw a lot of that, but Chris would be more hold things back, whereas your granddad got older. He once gave me the best bollocking I've ever had because we practiced on top of the square, and it was such a shock. He'd come over, that's sure a few swear words, you shouldn't be doing this. I said, well, we're trying to do we're trying to achieve some improvement in a pretty poor season. I don't know what season it is, but we soon met up, and then he came watching us play football all the time. Fantastic man, fantastic.
Yeah. No, I have great memories growing up, not just through cricket, but every weekend involved some sort of sporting adventure, and a lot of it involved going up to Belvedere and watching Blaise playing the goals. But great memories, completely different to, unfortunately, in my opinion, how a lot of kids are brought up today. There was no iPhones or iPads or anything like that. I was out every weekend in the winter and out every weekend in the summer as well.
And during the week, yeah.
Can I introduce you please to Maggie's famous buying bees? We appear to have lost one. Where the is Rusty gone?
Right, so we'll move on. So Ben, you've played those games in the 2003 season, obviously 2004 season. We've done it to death with other people on this podcast, but I do think it's really quite important to get your view of what happened that season, which obviously ended up in the club's first ever trophy. Tell me about your memories for that season.
Well, unfortunately, Jez, as many of the others who played in that season, a lot of it is a blur. I can't really pinpoint why, because I wasn't old enough to drink, although I might have been doing. I can't really remember. So I don't remember a lot of the league games, but I had a look today, did a bit of research, and I think I did start in the second 11, probably rightly so. And I made my first appearance that season on the 23rd of May, so it was the day before my birthday. And then when I clicked on that game today, it did bring back some memories, and I do remember that game. It was against Haslingden on the 23rd of May, and that was the first time that I'd come up against a certain Steve Dasher Dearden.
So what? I mean, I haven't got the scorecard in front of me, but because we've done so much work around the 2004 season, I've got everyone's runs in front of me. All I can see here is that it was your first game. You must have played in the seconds, and you got one run. What can you remember about that game then?
Yeah, I know we got stuffed. I do remember that. I did have the scorecard up earlier. There is a way of getting it up. Initially, it doesn't let you on, but I did get it up earlier. But I do remember that my won really, really well. Gone out to bat maybe 6 or 7, something like that. Maybe 8, late order. And
he went in at 8 before me.
Yeah. And the first ball off Dasher smashed me in the pad, and I'm not joking you. It felt like I'd broken my ankle. I'd never, ever seen anything like it. I mean, you're talking 2004 here, so I don't know how old Dasher would have been then, but, you know, he wouldn't have been far off his pomp, maybe just after. And then I think I managed to get down the other end, and I got a single off Stuart Catterall. I think I was batting with Blaise, actually. Yeah, off spinner. Batting with Blaise, and he called me through for a single. So I was on strike for Dearden the next over, and he bounced me. He bounced me first ball, and I just got my gloves in front of my face, and I was just shitting myself, absolutely shitting myself. And I just was not used to that type of thing at all. And I think you'll admit, Jez, you played a lot of league cricket. There weren't many who were quicker than Dearden, especially amateurs.
Yeah, he was, Ben. Yeah, he was sharp, and like you said, he was probably, you know, I'm not saying even sharper, but I think he'd gone pro in quite a bit before those years, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And when he came back, he'd obviously bulked up a lot and knew how to bowl quick when it mattered, you know, and which I'm sure we'll come on to in the final, to bowl quick. And as a young lad like yourself playing in that, and I've just seen now the result, we got absolutely hammered, didn't we, with that game where they beat us with 24 overs left.
Yeah. He's bounced me maybe the second or third ball that I faced against him. Nearly took my head off, just got my gloves in front of my face, feeling well out of my depth, not having a clue what's going on. And the next ball, I think I was either LBW or bowled, and I seem to remember being bowled, leg stick. Yeah, I was bowled, leg stick. And for some reason, I found myself in an awkward position, getting far too far across my stump, and he'd knocked my leg stick out, and I was rather embarrassed and walked back to the pavilion. So I don't really remember many of the other games that year. Obviously, the away game at Asland, was that one when Blaise got a ton?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was a day before the semi-final, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. But the rest of the league games are all a bit of a blur. But I had a look this afternoon, and I played 15 league games that season, and contributed a little bit, you know, a few 20s and 30s and stuff like that. So I was doing all right. I was finding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking there. Your second game, your second or third game, you got a nod out against Burnley in a victory. You're still only a young lad there, and you know, I think it's fair to say for all of us, you know, for Stanley and Joe, yeah, we were just bubbling into a decent side. Were we going to win the league? We weren't sure. You know, the cup always seemed to elude us a bit. So I suppose that's building up to what was happening. So looking at my stats here, you played in probably the vast majority of that season after then, Ben. What are your memories around the cup run?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that I played in the earlier knockout games and the quarter final. I may have done, but
you didn't. No, you didn't.
Oh, I did think I did.
Your first cup game was a semi.
Yeah, I thought so, because I can remember sort of hoping and praying after the quarter final that I was going to get picked for the final, because it wasn't a given. You know what I mean? I did contribute in the semi final, but I certainly wasn't guaranteed of a place in the final. So I did think that I'd missed the start of the cup competition for whatever reason.
Whose shot would you taken then? Maudsley's.
Say again, Joe.
If you played in the semi but you didn't play in the first two games, whose shot did you take?
I think it was Peter Maudsley's, because he 12th man in the final.
Yeah, he played in the first game when we beat Burnley.
Yeah. So it was maybe Matt needed the option of a few more overs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do remember now thinking back, and I'm just looking at what Pete Maudsley played in the league around then, and I'm not sure if he didn't go away on holiday or something mid-June, because he missed quite a few league games as well, which that's life, isn't it? Amateur cricketer.
Yeah.
If you're going to miss a few games and someone else takes the chance, so fantastic. Yeah, so you've got into the semi-final of a great competition with a team that have never won it before. So we're looking at 27th of June 2004. Ben, what's your memories of that?
The semi-final.
Yeah.
What a fantastic chase that was.
Yeah.
Great memories, you know, good Lowerhouse track, good pros, just fantastic memories, really. But one thing I will say, when I got into that team, although the club had gone all those years not winning anything, I've got to be honest, I'm not trying to sound pig-headed. But none of that meant anything because all the juniors I played in, we'd won pretty much everything. The under-17s, we'd mopped up. League sides that I played in, we'd mopped up. So, you know, I knew no fear, really. That didn't... I never, ever looked back and seemed to recall giving that much thought at all.
Yeah, I mean, and what do you think of that, Dooch? Because we had this conversation the other day on another podcast, how, you know, so we've got, you know, crikey, I'm a lot older than you, Ben, but you've got Joe's generation, or Joe's cricket players in the middle of it. I've come from an era where we just didn't know anything but being nice lads. We'll have a pint with you afterwards, and you know, there's 4 points and or whatever. What's your thoughts around that, Dooch?
Well, I think I did have a bit of both particularly because of the semi-final the couple of years earlier. After that semi-final a couple of years earlier, it was very much, and me and Charlie spoke about this at the time. Well, with Lowerhouse, this is what happens to us.
Yeah.
You know, we might get to a semi-final, but it's never going to go any further because we're Lowerhouse.
Yeah.
But I think it was the semi-final that kind of changed in 2004 that kind of changed that because, you know, again, first half of the game we weren't in the game really. Although, as we said in an earlier podcast, we weren't absolutely dead and buried because of the side that we had and the side that we were playing against. But once we got over that, it kind of lifted a little bit, and then obviously we've gone to win the final, and then that leads to something else that happens the following year. But just on Ben, by the time we get to the semi-final, so I battered with him in the semi-final. I battered with him in an early game that you just mentioned there when we played against Burnley, and it was clear to me at that stage that we were dealing with somebody who had something about him. I'm not going to say that at that stage I knew he was going to go on to do what he's done, because he won't fall out with me for saying he was a bit of an idiot at the time. You know, he was a wild child, and you know, he was one of them lads who you didn't really know if he was going to still be in the game in a few years' time. But what he did show when he was on the field and playing, he definitely had some spunk about him, and that's when you're playing with the young lads, that's what you're looking for. There was no shrinking violet about him at all, even though Dearden roughed him up. A few months later, he goes out and bats against him in the dark in the cup final. So, yeah, there was definitely something there to work with, no question.
Yeah. No, I can see that you would have been closer to Ben and his age group at that time, and probably saw more than I did. What's your memories about that, Stanley, and about Ben at that stage in his career?
Yeah, it's like I touched on earlier. It was not. I think Joe's right in saying it's not clear that someone's going to be a fantastic player, but I do recall Ben and Scott being the first two that I thought as a second team player. These are genuine future first team regular cricketers.
Yeah.
And then following that, the next one cab off the rank was probably Paddy Martin was the next one I remember of that ilk. And obviously being around the second team, you see a lot of kids come in that are supposedly the next great thing, that never actually kick on and never do it. And I know we're going to touch on something in a minute in relation to 2005 that I have some observations about as well regarding Ben. But yeah, I think Joe's right. It was sort of clear that there was definitely something there within him. Absolutely certain.
Yeah, and you are coming to, you know, at that stage, Ben, you're 16 in that semi-final. You've just gone 16, you know, and you've played an important part in it. But what will become significant as we continue, we bowled 7 bowlers in that game, and you weren't one of them.
Gordon, send more house to save the house.